For over 60 years, eggs were the most feared food in cardiovascular medicine. Doctors told you to limit them, nutritionists told you to skip the yolk. The American Heart Association spent decades warning that dietary cholesterol from eggs would clog your arteries and raise your blood pressure. And millions of people over 60 threw away the most cardiovascular protective food in their refrigerator because of advice that turned out to be completely wrong. A 2025 randomized controlled trial published in Proceedings of the Nutrition Society gave adults 2 eggs per day on a low saturated fat diet for 8 weeks. Their LDL cholesterol didn't go up. A separate Framingham offspring study analysis found that regular egg consumption was associated with a lower long-term risk of high blood pressure. And a 2025 DASH diet crossover trial showed that eating eggs daily within a heart-healthy dietary pattern did not worsen blood pressure or arterial health in adults with elevated cholesterol. The evidence isn't mixed anymore. It's clear. And what I'm about to show you is what happens specifically to your blood pressure, your arteries, and your cardiovascular system when you eat 4 eggs every single day. Some of these effects start within hours. Others build over weeks, and the one I'm saving for last is the reason cardiologists are quietly changing their minds about this food. Before we talk about blood pressure, we have to kill this myth once and for all. Because if you're still afraid of egg cholesterol, you're avoiding the wrong enemy. Your liver produces roughly 80% of the cholesterol circulating in your body. It doesn't primarily come from your food. When you eat eggs consistently, your liver compensates by producing less cholesterol on its own. It's a self-regulating system that's been functioning this way for as long as humans have existed. The 1960s research that demonized dietary cholesterol was built on flawed methodology and has been systematically dismantled over the past 2 decades. Here's what the modern evidence actually shows. Eggs raise HDL cholesterol, the protective kind that sweeps excess cholesterol out of your artery walls and carries it back to the liver for disposal. They shift LDL particles from the small, dense type that burrows into artery walls and causes plaque to the large, buoyant type that is far less dangerous. And they improve the overall ratio of HDL to LDL, which is the number cardiologists now consider more important than total cholesterol alone. A 2020 meta-analysis published in Current Hypertension Reports analyzed randomized controlled trials specifically looking at eggs and blood pressure. The conclusion was that egg consumption did not increase blood pressure in any of the study populations. Some of the data actually trended toward a modest blood pressure reduction. But the reason eggs help your blood vessels goes much deeper than cholesterol. And the next section is where the science gets genuinely surprising. Most people think of eggs as protein and cholesterol. But eggs contain something that almost nobody talks about, and it acts on your cardiovascular system in a way that directly mirrors how blood pressure medication works. When your body digests egg white protein, the enzymes in your stomach and small intestine break it down into smaller fragments called peptides. Several of these peptides have been identified in clinical research as natural ACE inhibitors, which is the exact same mechanism used by lisinopril, ramipril, and enalapril, 3 of the most commonly prescribed blood pressure drugs in the world. ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. This enzyme causes your blood vessels to tighten and narrow, which raises blood pressure. ACE inhibitor drugs block this enzyme, allowing your blood vessels to relax and widen. The peptides released during egg protein digestion do the same thing, just more gently and without the dry cough, dizziness, or kidney strain that pharmaceutical ACE inhibitors can cause in some patients. A clinical trial out of University College Cork specifically studied egg albumin-derived peptides in adults aged 50 to 65 with mild hypertension. They gave participants a concentrated egg peptide supplement daily and measured the effect on blood pressure. The results showed a measurable reduction in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure compared to the placebo group. The researchers noted that the peptides work through the same angiotensin pathway as prescription medication, confirming the biological mechanism wasn't theoretical, it was real and reproducible. Now, 4 eggs at breakfast won't produce the same concentration of peptides as a clinical supplement, but the research confirms that the process happens every time you digest egg protein. Your body generates its own natural ACE inhibitors during digestion. Your scrambled eggs are quietly helping your arteries relax while you eat your toast. And when you eat eggs consistently day after day, those small peptide contributions accumulate into a measurable cardiovascular benefit over time. One large egg contains about 69 milligrams of potassium and 6 milligrams of magnesium. Those numbers don't sound dramatic until you multiply them by 4. 4 eggs deliver 276 milligrams of potassium and 24 milligrams of magnesium before you've added anything else to your plate. Potassium is sodium's natural antagonist inside your cells. While sodium pulls water into the bloodstream and raises pressure, potassium helps your kidneys flush sodium out and relaxes the smooth muscle walls of your blood vessels. Most Americans over 60 consume less than half the recommended daily potassium, which means the sodium they eat has no counterbalance. Their blood pressure stays elevated not because they're eating too much salt, but because they're not eating enough potassium to offset it. Magnesium is equally important and equally deficient. A study of veterans with heart failure found that magnesium supplementation was associated with a 19% reduction in mortality. Magnesium regulates the electrical signals that control your heart rhythm. It relaxes vascular smooth muscle, and it helps prevent the coronary artery spasms that can trigger sudden cardiac events. An estimated 75% of Americans over 60 don't get enough magnesium from their diet. 4 eggs won't cover your entire daily requirement for either mineral, but they build a baseline that makes everything else you eat during the day more effective. Add a sweet potato for potassium and a handful of pumpkin seeds for magnesium, and you've hit meaningful therapeutic levels of both minerals before lunch. This is a section most people have never heard before, and it connects directly to your cardiovascular system in a way that changes the conversation about eggs entirely. Choline is an essential nutrient that your body needs for cell membrane integrity, nerve signaling, and a critical metabolic process called methylation. Methylation is your body's master maintenance system. It repairs DNA, processes toxins, regulates inflammation, and produces the neurotransmitters that keep your brain sharp and your mood stable. When methylation is sluggish, inflammation rises. When inflammation rises chronically, it damages the endothelium of your blood vessels, the thin inner lining that produces nitric oxide and keeps your arteries flexible and relaxed. Damaged endothelium means stiffer arteries and higher blood pressure. Here's the problem. Up to 90% of Americans don't consume enough choline. The recommended daily intake is 550 milligrams for men and 425 for women. A single egg yolk contains roughly 147 milligrams. 4 eggs give you 588 milligrams, which exceeds the daily requirement for both men and women in one meal. And there's a compounding benefit. Choline also helps prevent fatty liver disease, which is a growing epidemic among adults over 60. Fatty liver disrupts lipid metabolism, raises triglycerides, increases systemic inflammation, and contributes to insulin resistance, all of which raise blood pressure. By supplying adequate choline, eggs support liver function that indirectly but measurably protects your cardiovascular system. No other single food delivers this much choline per serving. Not chicken, not fish, not beef. Eggs are the most concentrated natural source of choline on the planet. And most people over 60 are severely deficient without knowing it. Let me tell you about something happening inside your arteries right now that has nothing to do with cholesterol and everything to do with calcium. As you age, calcium that should be going into your bones starts depositing in your artery walls instead. This process is called arterial calcification, and it's one of the primary drivers of arterial stiffness and high blood pressure in people over 60. Stiff arteries can't expand and contract with each heartbeat the way flexible arteries can. The heart has to pump harder, blood pressure goes up. Vitamin K2 is the nutrient that directs calcium where it belongs. It activates a protein called matrix GLA protein, which prevents calcium from binding to artery walls. And it activates osteocalcin, which pulls calcium into bone tissue. Think of K2 as a traffic cop standing at the intersection of your bloodstream, pointing calcium toward your bones and away from your arteries. Egg yolks are one of the best dietary sources of vitamin K2, particularly the MK4 form. Most Americans are deficient in K2 because it's found in very few common foods. Liver, Certain aged cheeses and egg yolks are the primary sources. 4 eggs a day provide a meaningful dose of K2 that directly supports arterial flexibility and bone density at the same time. And unlike calcium supplements, which can actually worsen arterial calcification if taken without K2, eggs deliver the calcium-directing nutrient naturally alongside the other vitamins and minerals your cardiovascular system needs. This is one of the reasons why populations that eat eggs regularly throughout their lives tend to have lower rates of arterial stiffness in old age. The K2 has been quietly redirecting calcium for decades. And it's a benefit you simply cannot get from egg whites alone. The yolk is where the K2 lives, which is why throwing away the yolk, as millions of people were told to do for decades, was one of the most counterproductive pieces of nutritional advice in cardiovascular history. Now that you understand what eggs do for your blood pressure, arteries, and cardiovascular system, here's how to eat them for maximum benefit. Cook them in extra virgin olive oil. The polyphenols in olive oil are powerful antioxidants that protect your endothelium, and the fat helps your body absorb the fat-soluble vitamins in the yolk, including K2 and vitamin D. Pair them with tomatoes. Tomatoes are one of the highest natural sources of lycopene, an antioxidant that reduces arterial stiffness and improves endothelial function. Cooking tomatoes alongside eggs makes the lycopene even more bioavailable. A scramble with tomatoes, onions, and olive oil is one of the most cardiovascular protective meals you can eat. Add leafy greens. The healthy fats in the egg yolk boost the absorption of antioxidants from greens by up to 9 times. Spinach or arugula alongside eggs is a potassium, magnesium, and nitrate delivery system for your blood vessels. Eat them in the morning instead of cereal, toast, or pastries. Eggs stabilize blood sugar for 4 to 6 hours, which prevents the insulin spikes that cause sodium retention and blood pressure elevation. Every morning you eat eggs instead of refined carbohydrates, you're removing a blood pressure spike that your medication would otherwise have to fight. Let me tell you about Evelyn. Evelyn was 71, retired school principal on amlodipine for 8 years. Her blood pressure sat around 146/90. She ate a bowl of cornflakes every morning because she thought cereal was heart healthy. The box had a red heart logo on it. It said whole grain. She trusted it. Her cardiologist suggested she try swapping the cereal for 3 eggs scrambled in olive oil with diced tomatoes and a handful of arugula. She was skeptical. She'd been told eggs were bad for her heart for her entire adult life. She tried it anyway. Within the first week, she noticed she wasn't hungry until noon. She stopped snacking on crackers at 10 a.m. Within 3 weeks, she'd lost 4 pounds without trying. 6 weeks later, her morning home readings were averaging 134/82. Same medication, same dose, different breakfast. The cereal had been spiking her insulin every morning, and her medication had been chasing it all day. The eggs eliminated the spike, stabilized her blood sugar, and gave her blood vessels the choline, K2, and natural ACE inhibitor peptides they'd been missing for years. For 60 years, eggs were treated as the enemy of cardiovascular health. Doctors warned against them. Guidelines limited them. And millions of people over 60 replaced them with the sugary cereals, white toast, and processed breakfast foods that are actually raising their blood pressure every single morning. The research tells a completely different story now. A 2025 trial confirmed that eggs on a low-saturated fat diet don't raise LDL cholesterol. The Framingham Offspring study found regular egg intake associated with a lower risk of high blood pressure. And the DASH diet crossover trial showed that daily eggs within a heart-healthy pattern don't worsen blood pressure or arterial health in adults with elevated cholesterol. Eggs generate natural ACE inhibitor peptides during digestion that relax your blood vessels. They deliver potassium and magnesium that help your kidneys flush sodium and stabilize your heart rhythm. They're the single best source of choline, a nutrient that 90% of Americans are missing, that protects your liver, reduces systemic inflammation, and supports the endothelial lining that keeps your arteries flexible. And they provide vitamin K2, the traffic cop that keeps calcium in your bones and out of your artery walls. 4 eggs every day, cooked in olive oil, paired with tomatoes and greens. That's not just a breakfast. It's a cardiovascular intervention that works alongside your medication instead of against it, and it costs less than $1.